ahead and get started. We'll just do a quick round of introductions. And then if you're on the phone, if you're calling in, if you would type in your name and your facility so we can make sure we get that noted that you were participating. So in the room, I'm Jessie Bonds with St. Luke's Infection Prevention, current chapter president.
I'm Suzanne Walsh, and I'm an infection prevention consultant.
Chapter treasurer.
Oh yes, sorry, chapter treasurer.
Kathy Pierce.
I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
I work at St. Luke's, that was it. And I'm the chapter secretary.
Megan Prescott, St. Luke's Infection Prevention, and I'm a current board member.
Amy Barrelacker, St. Luke's.
Susan Hepler, Division of Public Health.
Jordan Bashna, St. Luke's.
Kimberly Link, Central District Health Department, past president.
Kim Vermedal, St. Alphonsus Boise, and I'm a current board member.
Terry Noyes, St. Alphonsus Boise as well, and I'm a current board member. And then we get to introduce our speaker today is Marwan Sudan. He's an infection preventionist here at St. Al's, and he's going to talk to us about hepatitis B and what every infection preventionist needs to know about hepatitis B. So
Thank you very
you might
much.
have to do the...
Yeah, I can carry it and I can talk
Okay.
loud, so.
I got that on. I'll just close this for you and...
Sure. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marwan Sudan, and I am an infection prevention specialist at St. Alphonsus Regional Medical Center. Today, we're going to talk about hepatitis B, have an overview, and then what really matters for an IP. And I put a little bit in the end about occupational health and relationship to hepatitis C because I know some IPs, they do that role as well. So that's why I kind of put that there in the end. This works?
I might have to do that. Do the right.
Is that on,
Yeah.
the keyboard?
I think it's on.
Yeah, it's on. I wonder if the
Battery.
So,
yeah.
no disclosure
I can do it for you.
to announce. Okay, no, I can do it. No problem. And overview and framework, what is hepatitis and what are the type of viral hepatitis, global distribution and challenges for viral hepatitis, hepatitis B overview, and transmission population at risk. I think this is very important for us. Screening, this is one of the topics that few of us struggle, including myself, with it. Occupational health and vaccination exposure management. The framework and most of the sources came from World Health Organization, the CDC, and the IAPIC test, volume 3, usually between chapter 79 and 104, just for reference. So hepatitis. Hepatitis in general is the inflammation of the liver. There is a lot of conditions cause that. It's usually range from self-limited to all the way to fibrosis and carcinoma of the liver. The common cause of hepatitis, of course, is the viral. And the scientists identified 5 types of hepatitis. Name it from A to E. Usually A and E associated with food contamination and water. E are the ones that cause most outbreaks out there in the world, while A is caused like kind of a mild signs and symptoms, also associated with food and water contamination, and it caused a lifelong immunity for it. There is no vaccine safe and effective vaccine to prevent HIV infection have been developed, but are not widely used. So the big chunk is B, C, and D. They are all transmitted by bloodborne products and body fluids. B and D go together because D is actually required hepatitis virus B to migrate and move, and that's why the shell of it is actually the same surface antigen of hepatitis B. And of course, C is the most transmitted through exposure of infected blood. This may happen through transfusion, contaminated blood and blood products, and injection during medical procedures. There's no vaccine for hepatitis C. The focus will be on the middle 3, B, C, and D. By the way, all of the hepatitis viruses are RNA except for hepatitis B. And it has the ability to incorporate it in the genome of the liver, and that's why it causes carcinoma of the liver. Oops. So this figure just to show us the distribution mainly of the mortality rate of the hepatitis types. And you will notice probably in literature there's no much mention for hepatitis D because it's co-infected with B, so they put them together. And for the countries, if you see it's colored, this is the mortality rate on the left side based on the colors, and you can see the area like North Africa, Pacific, and Southeast Asia are the one who hit it the most. And the mortality rate, this is the pie charts. This is the color for which one of the viruses cause the most mortality. And as you can see, in the areas where hepatitis are more epidemic, the death rate or the mortality rate are related to B and C, and that's because of the complications that cause. So, there was still it's a global challenge. Viral hepatitis B and C together have affected 325 million people globally, 1.34 million deaths every year. Root cause of liver cancer, these are the most causes for liver cancers. It has become a major killer due to the lack of global attention. And I was surprised that the World Health Organization mentioned there is only 1% of people with a chronic hepatitis infection were receiving a treatment. By the way, hepatitis B can move from acute to a chronic condition. That's why the World Health Organization put the global health sector strategies on viral hepatitis. It's a really huge framework and step by step on how they're battling the hepatitis B and C. And they have a day for the hepatitis. It's July 28th. So just to raise awareness about that. Dive deep into hepatitis B. According to the World Health Organization, hepatitis B virus can cause an acute and chronic disease. An estimation of 257 million people are living with hepatitis B virus. In 2015, hepatitis virus resulted in almost more than 750,000 of deaths, mostly from complications, as we said. Hepatitis B is an important occupational hazard for healthcare workers, and that's what matters to us, most. It can be prevented by current available safe and effective vaccination. And the vaccination, there is no complication for the vaccination, and it's available in every, health facility. And we're going to talk about the vaccination, who need it, and how we do it. Geographically, the World Health Organization, of course, have offices, and they look into diseases through these offices and regions. That's how they divide the world. So talking about hepatitis B, the percentage of the general population infected with hepatitis B is 6.2% in the Western Pacific region. That's China, Mongolia, Japan, New Zealand, Australia. 6.1% in the World Health Organization African region, which is Central, West, and South Africa. 3.3 in the Eastern Mediterranean region, which is Central Asia, Middle East, and North Africa. 2% in the Southeast Asia region, and 1.6 in the European region, 0.7 in the Americans region, both of them. And this is, I think, will shift dramatically. And my interpretation for that is there's 50 to 60 million refugees that shifted from areas that have the highest rates of population infected, which is the Eastern Pacific, Africa, and Middle East toward United States and Europe mostly, either by wars or by extreme weather or natural disasters. So I anticipated probably in the next 2 years we will see a different percentage. According to the CDC in the U.S., in 2016, there is a total of 3,280 cases 18 cases of acute hepatitis B were reported to the CDC from 48 states. The overall incident rate for 2016 was 1 cases per 100,000. And of course, that was just adjusted under some calculation they did. There's 2 graphs on that. The first graph on the left side is Idaho in 2017. That's from our website, and you can see hepatitis B acute and chronic. It's 6 and 89 patients, more than everybody else. The one on the left side is the incidence of acute hepatitis B by year. The hepatitis B incidence actually decreased in the United States from 1994 all the way to 2014. And then after 2014, you're going to see kind of slight plateau. And the reason behind that is because of the increase of intravenous drug use in the United States, and that's why they noticed that. And the most decrease in population found in children population. Since the United States established the routine vaccination in 1991, the hepatitis B in the children decreased dramatically over that time. So that would drive the curve down. So, speaking about the transmission of hepatitis B virus can survive outside the body for at least 7 days. It still can cause an infection. Incubation period ranges from 60 to 150 days after exposure. By the way, this number came from the CDC. The IAPIC text, for the sake of the exam, they put it 30 to 180, so you just need to be careful. And the World Health Organization, by the way, they use that number, 30 to 180. On average, that's 75 days to 90 days occupational period. And transmitted exposed to blood and body fluids, such as saliva, menstrual fluids, vaginal and seminal fluids. And of course, the mechanism of transmission is needle stick or sharp instrument exposure, contact with the blood or person source of infected person, and also bites. Human bites can cause that if the patient is chronic or acute with high infectivity. Birth to infected mother, and I think we need to report that for the moms that give birth to a child. The child has to receive the immunoglobulin within 24 hours, and also the vaccine, and then we report it to the health district. And injected drugs used that involve sharing needles, syringes, that's among the drug consumers, sharing items such as razors and toothbrush. Funny thing, in Iraq, we used to have this blade, like not the razor, change, it's a blade, they kind of sharpen it, and they use it, and they stop, they put the now single razor, and that replaced. So the good thing, I kind of escaped from that. Of course, sex with an infected partner can also cause a transmission. Hepatitis B is not transmitted or spread through food or water, sharing eating utensils, and I know we mentioned saliva in the previous slides, but this is after you wash them. If you wash them, there's a very, very low chance that it's transmitted. Breastfeeding, it is the mom with hepatitis B, there's no contraindication not to feed the baby like breastfeeding. So this is one of the things that we educate the NICU healthcare providers at that. Hugging and kissing, holding hands, coughing and sneezing, they are not transmitted. And by the way, they mentioned that because if you notice, a lot of hepatitis actually in the poor region in developing countries like Mid-Asia, South Pacific, Middle East, and we do have that practice of holding hands, and walking streets and all of that, kissing and hugging and all of that, but we don't cough and sneeze in each other's faces. So based on the transmission mode and, chain of transmission, the population at risk is, of course, the healthcare and public safety workers. These are I think, the most people are dangerous because we see the most cases coming to us. Hemodialysis patients, a child born to infected mother, injectable drug users, sex partners of infected persons, homosexual men, household contact of a known person with a chronic hepatitis B virus infection. And the World Health Organization, they mentioned that if there is a child under 5 years old with hepatitis B, can actually there is a high risk of infecting another child below 5 years. This is the high population at risk. So, I think the biggest thing we need to focus on is how to screen for hepatitis B virus. The screening should be done so that the person can be classified into appropriate hepatitis B category and properly recommended to receive vaccination, counseling, and linkage to care and treatment. The screening should include tested for 3 seromarkers. There's actually many seromarkers in hepatitis B. There's the core, there's the envelope, but they are focusing on these. Hepatitis B surface antigen, antibody to surface antigen, and antibody to the core antigen. These are the 3 that they do the screening based on. There is a lot of tools that talk about the screening and how we screen and the interpretation of the screen. I think the best tools, I put it in these 2 slides. The first slide is talking about, this is from the CDC. The first link, before we talk about the slide, they have a series of videos to explain each seromarker and the interpretation, how they use it, and the interpretation of the screening test. And there is a PDF file. It's also nice to look at because it kind of breaks it down to which one is immune, which one is recovered, chronic, high, low, infectivity, and chronic, and acute. However, for medical students, I find out that they use this tool, which probably make it even easier. So on the left side, on that table, you'll find the markers they are looking at, or I'm sorry, the diseases they are looking at, whether it's acute hepatitis B, the window, the chronic hepatitis B, high infectivity, and low infectivity, and then recovery from that disease and immunized person or not. On the top of that table is the seromarkers they look for. So let's kind of talk more about this. So a person with hepatitis B surface antigen came positive in acute. By the way, this is the main one that I looked at. If the hepatitis surface antigen came positive and the antibody for core came IgM, that's an acute. Because we all know that IgM is for acute, IgG for chronic or recovery or immune. And also they will look for the antigen for envelope, because what that tells us is that the viral is actually actively replicates. So that's why it is considered acute. The window is that when the signs and symptoms go to a prodrome, it kind of fade away for a while. And that's why we find only the antibody for the envelope antigens. And the chronic, whether it's high infectivity or low infectivity, both we will have the surface antigen positive, right? The difference is in high infectivity, the antigen for the envelope will be positive because the viral is still actively replicating. And low infectivity is the antibody for the envelope. So if we find surface antigens, both positive, and then the difference between the high infectivity and low will be, is it antibody or antigen? Find it in the test. For the recovery, everything will shift to antibody. So we'll find antibodies for surface and antibody for the envelope. And of course, the core will be IgG. The immunized, because the vaccine, they made it from recombined DNA. In the United States, they used to have either blood from patients, and they kind of worked out to bring these antigens, or the new technology became recombined DNA technology that, extract that antigen and replicate it. So they stopped the previous practice, and they only focus on the recombined DNA technology. For the immunized people, they will give the antigen, and they will see the response to this. There's a whole talk about response, how we kind of measure it and do that. The other graph on the right side, it shows you by months after exposure, what happened in the serology and the blood of the patients associated with the sign and symptom. So as you can see, the first one after infection happened, is the surface antigen will increase, and then followed by the envelope antigen, and then the anticore antibodies will increase starting from the month 2 all the way after. That's why, based on that, they don't test for hepatitis B prior to 30 days after exposure, or after 6 months after exposure usually. This is the window that they want you to jump into it. So based on that, we need to screen our population at risk. So the following persons should be screened for 3 seromarkers that we talked about: the surface antigen, the antibody for the surface antigen, and the antibody for the core antigen. So persons born in countries with 2% or higher hepatitis B virus prevalence, persons who use injectable drugs, HIV positive persons, household and sexual contact of hepatitis B affected persons and homosexual men, persons requiring immune suppressing therapy. There is a lot of testing for these populations, TB, hepatitis B, and all of that. So, person with end-stage renal disease, include hemodialysis patients, blood and tissue donors, that of must, of course, persons infected with hepatitis C, persons with elevated alanine or liver function tests will increase. That's probably an indication for infection. And incarcerated persons, pregnant women, and infant born to hepatitis B infected mother, whether it's the antigen or anti-surface antibody, are only recommended in that population. So, we know the population at risk, we know the screening, how it's done, we know who to screen. Now let's talk about what needs to be done after that. Of course, they want you, every hospital, they recommended to identify who's the most health worker that get exposed to blood products. This is important. Of course, everybody is getting exposed, but there's some population in the hospitals that work in hemodialysis or in surgeries, all of these things. And then you need to identify the non-employee health and care personnel, that is like volunteers and all of that. And you put a policy for them. You have to have something for them. So for the employee healthcare personnel, at time of hire, the healthcare provider potential for exposure should be determined, and their vaccination status should be assessed. Post-vaccination screening is advised for personnel at ongoing risk for blood exposure to determine the response that they have. So, the CDC recommended vaccines for healthcare worker if you don't have documented evidence of complete hepatitis B virus vaccine series, or if you don't have an up-to-date blood test that shows you are immune to hepatitis B. AI, no serology evidence of immunity or prior vaccination, then you should get the 3 doses series, dose 1, 2, and 3, in 1 month, and 3 approximately 5 months after, the first 2 doses, the immediate, and then after a month, and the third one after 5 months. So overall, over 6 months, you have to have your vaccination. And then get the antibody for surface antigen serology test 1 to 2 months after doses 3. So after 6 months after you complete, let's say after the last dose, right? And then you wait for 30 to 60 days, and then you test the response. That's when you have. And you test for the antibody against the surface antigen. There is a lot of, there's a tree, and there is a lot of talk about that in the CDC website. So I put the link there so you can go and find more in depth and details about exactly what needs to be done. And in the United States, there's 2 types. There's a single antigen hepatitis B vaccine, and there's combination vaccines. All can be administered. In the IAPIC textbook, they only mention 3, which is the single antigen hepatitis B vaccine, Engerix and Ritonavir. And for combination vaccine, we'll use the Twinrix. The Epidurix and Hepli-Sav are new. That's why they are from the CDC, but in the IAPIC box, the first three I mentioned, that's the only, the one they recommended. So if you are taking the exam again, just be aware. Now we identify the mode of transmission, the population of risk. We know who to vaccine and how to vaccine, now how to manage exposure. But first of all, if you have an occupational health department, an IP department, make sure they call the occupational health department, not the IP. And
You guys get that?
That never happened.
However, if you are in a facility and you have multiple hats and you are the occupational health personnel, like, first, I feel sorry for you. Second, these are the things that you need to know. The date and time of exposure, as much of details about the, how you get exposed and all of that. Details of exposure including the type, the amount of fluid, the materials, the severity of exposure, details about exposure sources, whether the detail about exposed persons, if you can, collect these information, and of course about counseling and post-exposure management and follow-up. Again, factors to consider in assessing the need for follow-up of occupational exposures are divided into 4 categories: the type of exposure, the type and amount of fluids and tissues, infected status of the source, and susceptibility of the exposed persons. Do they have a response or not? And then you're going to go to the evaluation of occupational exposure source. We have to dig deep about the source. We divide them into unknown source and known source, and these are the steps into it. So, for example, for known sources, the test known sources for surface antigen, an antibody for hepatitis C virus, and HIV antibodies, of course. Direct virus assay for routine screening for source patient and are not recommended in this case. Consider using a rapid HIV antibody test. And it goes along all these steps that you need to follow. And by the way, the link in this slide is actually have all these steps spelled out, one by one. So if you have that role as occupational health, you need to follow these steps. This is how you manage if you identify a person got exposed and at risk to develop hepatitis B virus. We divide them again into a vaccinated population, healthcare worker, of course, or people who get exposed, and previously vaccinated. And the previously vaccinated, do they have a response or not? If the response is unknown or known. So that's what the table is talking about. And this is the management and the steps you need to follow. Of course, that's the end of it. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or happy thoughts.
On that slide, the one before this one, where it talks about the known responder?
Yes.
You should not, if they're a known responder, you should not test the victim again, because they can be negative, but they think the body will have an amnestic response. So once positive, just leave it at positive. Don't test them again.
Good point.
Otherwise they will start a series again.
Yes.
So, I see that over and over at St. Luke's. They'll go into the ED because employee health is closed, and so they'll draw their blood, they'll do the antibody, it's negative, but they were positive, and then they start their series again. We'll give them a second series.
Yeah, and the CDC indicated that since they started to recommend the vaccines for healthcare providers, they actually noticed a drop, in the hepatitis B among exposed people working in the healthcare sector. There's great numbers about that in the CDC. So.
When did you say the hepatitis day is? In July?
July
28th. July 28th.
Yeah. Anybody on the phone have any questions?
What are the do you know the current vaccination rates for HPV in Idaho? What that trend is like? Is it?
That's a good question. Probably Susan can.
Be prepared.
I know with all the anti-vax stuff going on, I wondered if that's dipping down, if that's causing an increase in cases, or I don't know.
In this part of the state, I think the rates are okay. In terms of what we see here, we get a handful of acute cases every year. Risk factors are sometimes wishy-washy, probably a mix of sexual contact and drug use, I would say, are the big determinants. I would say most of the cases that we have reported here who are reported as a chronic Hep B infection are people who are foreign-born. So coming here either immigrant or refugee status. So again, seeing folks, a lot of the folks are from East Asia.
Yeah. And the good news is that the recovery from hepatitis B is actually good. Only 5% that was actually acute hepatitis B can develop a chronic condition. And unfortunately, in developing countries, the governments and countries struggle with that because it costs a lot of money, and they put initiatives like from their emergency funds, not from the health department's funds, to battle this. For example, Egypt, they have a big issue with hepatitis C virus. And if you know, Cairo is the third or fourth crowded city worldwide, you will kind of understand the risk that the Egyptian government have with this, unstable situation there. So that's one of the issues that kind of hinder the effort to give a routine vaccination for population. Either the country cannot really afford it, or they don't have a comprehensive healthcare programs, or there's like a natural disaster or war going on there. That's why.
Well, thank you, Marwan.
Sure,
That was
thank
a
you very
great
much.
presentation.
You've been
Gave
great
me some
audience.
reminders that you forget about.
Sure. Thank you very much. And these are the resources you want to review to things.
Awesome. Well, I think next we have Kathy to present our CIC study question.
So apparently we have a WebEx issue, so I apologize everyone on the phone if you can't see the screen. Looks like there was a update, because it looks different, so I might have to send out a new appointment for joining for the future. So.
Yeah, and then you can access the slides on the website if you want to review those slides.
Oh, that's good to know. This is Debbie, and I was just sitting here thinking I was being really stupid and couldn't get it open.
Sorry about that. There's always some technical difficulty. It never fails, so.
I hope you all took notes, because a lot of these questions are on Marwan's information.
There you go. Just remember, 30 to 180 days.
I didn't get that one. I didn't see that one. So our first question, a dialysis patient who is known to be positive for hepatitis B has been admitted to the surgical floor for a surgical procedure. The patient needs dialysis 3 times a week. The inpatient dialysis unit doesn't have an isolation room, and it's really small. The dialysis nurse has requested the IP's assistance in identifying the best location to dialyze the patient. Which of the following should the IP recommend? Transfer the patient to an isolation room in the outpatient unit, perform the treatment in the inpatient unit, perform the treatment in the patient's hospital room, transfer the patient to an isolation room in the ICU.
What's the difference between B and C?
They have a dialysis unit on the inpatient unit, and one they're gonna move the machine into the patient's room is what I'm thinking that says, correct?
On the treatment of the patient.
But like on C, they're going to move the unit into the and then the other one they're going to put it on in a treatment room.
I think B.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I can figure out how to get, this is all new.
C. Do it in the patient's hospital room.
Yep. So how is that different than?
I guess I don't understand what.
Yeah, B and C were like very similar.
Inpatient unit, what do they mean by?
I think they don't mean in the patient's room.
Okay.
Like in the hallway?
Yeah, there you go. Well, like,
Separate room, I can see
Maybe they do things differently back east, Jesse. You've been back. Well, housewives, you guys want me to read it, or do you want to just read it? It's up to you.
No, that's what they're saying.
So is that what they're
Need a
saying?
separate room and separate machine.
Yeah.
The question would become, don't you think, is how are they going to, what are they going to hook up to the sink, and how is, because we've had that question, right?
Yeah.
Just the dirty sink and all that stuff, they can't wash their hands in there.
Yeah, hopefully they.
But you don't have to agree with the answers.
Okay.
All right, so this is where you get those hallway consultations. When the nurse that got a needle stick sees the IP walking in the hallway and she hasn't completed her Hep B series, she wants to know the IP's advice. Since she hasn't completed her series, because she says the patient's antibody to Hep B is positive and his Hep B surface antigen is negative. The ISP's explanation of the patient's laboratory results indicate which of the following. These are tricky ones. I should have started with the easy ones.
Can the folks on the phone, they can't see these questions?
But they, I
It's on the
most of them
website.
from the mob off the website, yeah.
If the surface antigen is negative, that's neither in recovery, the patient is in recovery.
You should know this answer.
Yeah.
So which one do you think? So which one is in recovery?
I think B was in recovery. Yeah. Does not have an active disease now. The nurse should complete her hepatitis B
Oh, I
series.
didn't send you the right copy because that doesn't say additional. They corrected that.
No additional treatment.
What they should really do is, I'm sorry, I can't discuss this in the hall.
All occupation health. That's what I was saying.
Patient has had it in the past and does not have active disease now. They should complete their hepatitis B.
Well, the wording's always strange.
Do you have 3 questions?
Right.
Yeah, 4.
4? Okay.
So an employee got a needle stick injury while providing care. All the following lab tests would be appropriate for the source patient except
Hep C surface antigen.
Right.
nope.
B antibody.
Yep. B antibody.
Oh.
So the source patient, you always do the HIV, the surface antigen, and the Hep C antigen.
When you do a Hep C antibody,
Yeah, so that one's not right either.
that's not a.
Yeah,
that's
that's
never
not
even
true.
heard of.
Sometimes the questions aren't right.
Sometimes they're just a little bit wrong.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Kim said.
That's
You don't
true.
need
For
to-
Hep
I
C,
don't
you
know.
either do
But
antibody
you do
or
a Hep C
RNA.
one. I'll have to go back and look at what we used to order.
Yeah, it should be Hep C antibody.
Yeah, it should be antibody.
Yeah.
Well,
And
some
this
of
is very
the,
similar to your graph, right?
Yeah.
Your,
some of the study guides too, then later they come out with corrections too.
That's
Which
true.
doesn't make it helpful if you're
Right,
trying to
yeah,
study.
it's a study guide.
I mean, sometimes the study guides are,
Yeah,
shouldn't say that to people that are studying. Error.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. All right. Yeah.
So according to the CDC and the ACIP, which of the following groups should receive the hepatitis B vaccine?
Trick question.
Everybody should, because it's a routine childhood vaccine.
Yeah, nowadays, I suppose,
The
Want the answer?
I think.
Yeah. I would say C.
so it's everybody except for those receiving chemotherapy.
It's because you knew the 2 and 3 were correct.
Yeah.
And that's the only one that had 2 and 3 in it. The rest didn't have that. You have to always eliminate.
Yeah. What was the bottom one? Was that the diabetes?
Yeah.
One? Yeah.
You might not start vaccinating people in the middle of their chemotherapy. They're not going to get a good immune response.
I would also think you wouldn't want to do people that are getting dialysis, because that can change your status. They usually check right before they start dialysis, right?
They should.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they have, the liver holds the vaccination.
Yes.
So they can go negative, right?
Okay.
These are good questions.
Yeah.
Tricky, huh?
Yeah, they are tricky.
Yeah. I had to hunt through to find the ones for it being my, I have.
There is a lot of Q&A, which is commonly asked about hepatitis B in chapter 103, about the occupational health. What do they need to do if they are not responding, if they are respond, should they repeat it or not? It's like probably 24 questions.
Yeah, and if you haven't
And
worked.
the text, not the,
If you haven't worked employee health before.
yeah,
It's tricky.
so,
Especially with the antigen,
yes,
is the antibody.
which is antibody on, yeah.
So, yeah, plain
Well, it's a good thing there's reference tables available.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't have to memorize.
That's right.
I think next, Amy.
Oh,
Sarah,
I spent, if you're able to pull that. Yeah, I just want to give an update. So I'm on the IAPIC National Member Services Committee. This is my last year. It's a 3-year term. And we recently had, I was able to go back to IAPIC and we had a 2 full-day meeting to kind of talk about membership stuff. So wanted to bring a couple things just to promote that IAPIC membership as we're kind of out and about, as we can all promote it. And so Terry, in the actual email is just some benefits of.
So the email is all new too, so I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Trying to,
That's okay. So just wanted to go over a couple things. I don't know if did everybody get this email? They're doing some test things and it's just, and I think it's the test one, but it basically just talks about some of the benefits of your membership. So I think this is an opportunity. We've got new IPT members at St. Luke's, and so we always just say, okay, I go sign up for IAPIC, but I don't know if we ever really kind of go through what you get in your membership. And so I think that's just a good call out to think about if you do have new team members, to kind of sit down and maybe pull up the IAPIC site and go through all of the components, because there's a lot of great things out there. So as you guys know, there's live and archived webinars, and Terry, that's for later.
for later?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's live and archived webinars, and so just taking a peek at those, because there's a lot of great ones out there. A lot of information on education, networking opportunities through the communities, through your My APIC, using the listservs, local chapters. They're really promoting the local chapters to network with your other IPs, and then also the annual conference. Who's going to the annual conference from the
National?
The national one?
Yeah, Kim and I are going.
Oh, great. Jordan's going to be there. You're going to be there. I'll be there.
Kathy's going.
Yeah, great. So some networking for the team members that are going to be from Idaho at the IAPIC conference. And then also they have the Career Center, they have practice guidance, they have the implementation guides. So kind of just throwing it out there that maybe one of these education sessions we could do the benefits of your membership, just to make sure that we're utilizing it, because there is a lot of great things. And then a lot of those tools help to get the certification and help in your CIC journey and whatnot. And then 2 other documents I just want to share. There's one, and these are both in AGIC. This is, let's see here.
I'm sorry.
This just came out, and we talked about this at the national one, but this is in the most recent AGIC, and it's the role of the infection preventionist in the transformed healthcare system, meeting healthcare needs in the 21st century. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but they had, IAPIC did like a consensus conference in November, I believe. First time that they've done this, brought in a variety of experienced IPs, some outside folks, and really just kind of looked at how's healthcare changing and looking at the population health. I think that's a buzzword that we're all hearing about, and really came up with some recommendations of things to look at as an IP moving forward in the future. So this is a really great article. So it's just, it was just published. So take a peek at it. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I think we're going to see a lot from our national APIC and within our organizations, thinking about your programs with kind of the future changes of healthcare. And so APIC's jumping on that and taking a stance, and I think this is some of the work that they're going to be doing coming up. So they did come up with some really good recommendations. So just throwing that out there as take a peek at that. And then the other one is just another quick little brief on your membership and how to get the most out of your membership. So that's something I'm going to propose that maybe for a education that we kind of do some digging into that a little bit more. So wanted to just, APIC is another one. I was surprised with some of the chapter surveys. We reviewed a lot of the chapter survey information. APIC is like the #1 resource that the APIC members say, yes, this is beneficial, which is kind of interesting in that aspect. So I think it's just a reminder to utilize what we pay for these memberships, and they've got a lot of great information out there, and so to utilize that. And then also to put a plug in, if you're a national APIC member, also become a Intermountain APIC chapter member to just continue to kind of participate in the local stuff. So
The webinars are really great because you can get your continuing ed, which I know Idaho just added, but I have other nursing licenses. And it's free then, so you're getting they're like an hour, they're short, so.
And they're great. We've even you can share them with other disciplines in the hospital too. So you can invite, have a room and share them with other disciplines or invite people to come watch. So that's another great tool to kind of spread the information that we get from APIC also to other folks.
Thank you for sharing that.
On anything with APIC membership? Okay.
So what are you going to do next?
I don't know. You can't run for the same committee again.
Oh, okay.
So after 3 years, you're off. And this was, it was actually pretty cool going back to APIC and spending 2 full days. And there was a couple of us going off this year, and we're like, we want to stay back on now because we've got all this new momentum, and there's some cool work going to be coming out. But they said, you're going to have to try to go on a different one. And then you could always come back another time.
I have a question. Would you recommend running for a board position with National APIC?
Yes. Yes. And I was going to, at the board meeting, I was going to talk with you guys a little bit more on that. But absolutely, you definitely have to have some participation in your local chapters, I think, to do that. So kind of a plug again to get involved in your local chapter. But yes, I would highly recommend that. It doesn't sound like they get as many applicants, and they're kind of struggling to even get some applicants on this. But this is the first year that we did the in-person meeting, and it was fabulous. It was just kind of fun to just in person get to know all the folks that we've been on the phone with. And it's very interesting that we're all across the nation in different places. Everybody's struggles are the same. Everybody was going through like reorgs and just the same kind of struggles and the same things that we deal with in Idaho, other folks are dealing with. But yes, I would highly recommend
What
that.
is the time commitment?
I think it probably depends on which committee you're on. So I'm on the Member Services Committee at National APIC. We do meet. We have an in-person meeting for like a luncheon and it's like a 3-hour meeting that we do meet. And then I think they're going to try to start doing this kind of an annual basis. And then we meet monthly, so similar to like this for an hour. And then there might be little projects that we have to kind of do on our own outside of it. Not a huge commitment, but I think it also depends on probably which committee you join. But I think at APIC, it looks like they're kind of changing up a lot. There's a lot of new people changing up some of their committees, and so I think this meeting, I think there's going to be a lot more robust things that come out of it. So, but not a huge commitment. I think the chair of the committee gets pulled into a few other things. And then the Member Services Committee that I'm on, we also do the luncheon. the leadership luncheon at IAPIC, the day before the conference, starts. So there's some work behind the scenes on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Are there any roundtable items for discussion or any hot topics going on at your facility?
Got one update in the realm of, since we're talking about hepatitis. So we do have across the southern part of the state, we have an ongoing hepatitis A outbreak. 14 cases since the beginning of the year. We're seeing ongoing transmission going on here locally. So definitely encouraging providers to test, vaccinate people who are at risk. We've been doing outreach from the health department, working with the local homeless shelters to try to increase vaccination rates there. We're looking at other avenues as well to get more vaccine out into the community. We're planning on putting another health alert out. We put one out a couple months ago, but probably another one maybe next week, just to give an update as far as case counts and make sure the providers know that transmission is still ongoing.
Is there any evidence of a common source?
Yeah. It seems like it's person to person. So, part of our investigation is looking at a pretty detailed food history, where people have been. Do they know anybody else that's ill? A couple of the cases have named back to say, oh yeah, my friend so-and-so had hepatitis and they were a known case. So we have seen some where it's a known transmission that's going on. The CDC has been able to do genotyping. This is a new thing for us with FA. And what we've seen is that there is a common genotype, so it's spreading. I think there were 5 that linked in. So some of the earlier cases we didn't have the capacity. CDC wasn't testing at that point, so we tried to get as many specimens over as possible, and 5 of them were matching. So we do know that there's commonality in that virus. Yeah.
What do you say south of the state, right?
Yeah, so health districts 3, 4, and 5 right now have been affected. So Canyon County area and our area are still currently seeing cases. District 5, so the Twin Falls area, hasn't had active cases here in a couple of months, so hopefully they've kind of made it past on their side of it.
Cool. Thanks for the update.
Yeah.
Any other
I have a question. Has anybody had a Joint Commission survey recently or on the phone? Just seeing if there's any changes with how they're surveying or anything like that?
Now, we're going to be in the window in October, but just had a mock survey.
On the phone, has anybody had any Joint Commission surveys?
That's pretty quiet. Alrighty, well, I think that's the end of the session then, if there's no other discussion points.
Are we set for the next session, what we're gonna discuss for the education, or?
Yeah, so May there's gonna be, a hiatus, we're not gonna meet in May, and then in June, we'll meet again.
Yeah, I think that's.
And I believe is it in the APIC update?
Yeah.
So it will be individuals that went to APIC are going to kind of present some key takeaways from the conference.
And Marwa, would we have you doing journal club before that as well?
Yes, that's my next question. Are we
Okay.
doing that? Okay. I'll wait for your email.
Yeah, journal club will be, if you're interested, we'll be having a journal club before the meeting in June. And we'll send out an invite for that. I just ask that you RSVP, because we will be providing lunch. Journal clubs are better in person if you can make it. I feel it's better for discussions and whatnot. So we'll send out an appointment, and then just let us know if you can make it.
Yeah, and I did reserve this room sooner, so.
Perfect.
It'll be, available.
Alrighty, well, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned.
Okay, that is. We will see you next time.
Can you see who was on it all?
Or on D?